All righty. Thank you for joining me on another episode of What Sayeth the Crooked Nose. And I have with me today my mate, right? Pun intended, Christopher.
Yep.
And he's gracing us with a little bit of time before he goes out to a place that I can't properly pronounce.
Called
And
Malakuta.
yeah. And so why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, man? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what really kind of motivates you.
Yeah, okay. That's always the big question to get started, isn't it? Well, for a long time, I was this guy. I was Kris from Callus Constructions, a small company that I built to earn an income and create a home and do all the wonderful things of life, as I've known. And then I had a pretty epic 2020 that caused me to jump into personal development, discover more of myself. And
Mm,
since then, having discovered more of myself, I discovered how much more of myself there is to discover.
mm. The layers and layers. Do you mind if I
Yeah.
pry a little bit
Go
into,
for it. Go
yeah,
for it.
so
Go for it, Josh.
2020, I'm
Yes.
assuming pandemic related or pandemic was a catalyst for something maybe?
Yeah, oh, I've got the walk on water story today. You want me to share that?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So at the time in 2019, my wife at the time became ill. Stress at work caused her to become unlike herself. And then COVID gave us a break. Her cousin and another housemate were living with us at the time. Her cousin ended up passing away a
Hmm.
year later, but without reason. Like the coroner's report is without reason. And then
Whoa.
a week after that, discovered we were pregnant, surprisingly. 2 weeks after that, that I was being separated from, and then a week after that, an abortion. And so then, like all of the things that can happen in one's life that I'd spent, 13 years in that relationship building, kind of fell from underneath my feet. And I was like, yo, where do I stand today? I don't know what I stand on. So
Yeah.
then I had to learn how to fly real quick,
Hmm.
how to drop the weight and become a bit more spirited, let's say. And that's been it. That's been the key.
Has that been something that you found, or has that something that's found you?
I think if I'm to be really like I've been a carpenter for all my life. I grew up with a hammer in my hand is the saying I like to go with.
Hmm.
And like being constructive is part of who I am. So always looking to find a solution is how I continue to make my way through, the maze of grief.
Hmm.
I was always looking up rather than staring at the ground. And so as I was doing that, I realized, it's me who chooses this. It's me who chooses this. And realizing that it's my responsibility to choose.
And at what point did you realize that?
Well, I think that's the ever evolving present moment that it's an understanding and a
Yeah.
value that I carry with me. It's under my arm. It's here with me always. And like 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, my dad passed away.
Oh man.
And so now it really is up to me.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody else to turn to. I have to be the person that fathers myself, whether I like it or not. And so my ideas of my dad are my own, and that's how I hold them with gratitude.
And dude, that's powerful. And I
It
appreciate you
is,
sharing
yeah.
that. And that's when we realize that we can give ourselves the same love that our folks can, and like you said, be our own dad,
Mhm.
in some ways be our own mom, give ourselves the
Yep.
feminine energy that we were missing,
Yep.
and love ourselves from a place of wholeness. Right. That's something magical. But
Absolutely.
it's exceedingly difficult to find. And
Mhm.
I have found that in my life as well, it required something very tragic that, the circumstances were terrible.
Yes.
And the best way that I could describe it is that all the walls that I had erected around my heart, well, they just blasted and fell down. And then it was when I started looking through the debris and the rubble, I realized like, oh, this never once protected me from shit. The only thing it did is it blocked me from my connection.
Yep.
And yeah, and I think that's why we often have to hit something really hard, right? Before we pay attention, because we fall under this illusion of safety by thinking that if we try to maneuver things in our outer world, or as Peter Sage would say, coloring the water inside the cup,
Yes. Yep.
that somehow means that we have control and that we can now have certainty because we can
Mhm.
finagle these things like a squirrel, arranging its nuts. Um,
Yes.
And it's all an illusion, because the second that that tree shakes, all those nuts are going crazy and going
Mm.
everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And that's that, how I got through my experience was to remember that I only ever live presently. I can't be more or not enough. I
Mm,
am this version of who I am, and if it's not enough in other people's eyes, tough.
yeah, I like
So
that.
what? In somebody else's eyes is through their own lenses. So I can't control that, and I leave that to them. And if they want to like share the way that their mind works with me, I'll give it back to them. Not up
Oh,
to
I
me
like
to
that.
deal with. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's not up to me to come to terms with. But obviously, also be open to receiving any message that's worth hearing in there. Like if there's something that I need to become more tolerant of within myself, take that with me as something I can learn.
So I'd like to share an idea with you with that idea
Go
of
for it.
being tolerant. So you're familiar with this book here, the Busting Loose from the Money Game? Probably you may not be able to see that.
Uh, no, I
So
haven't. I haven't read that one yet.
so that was part of I can't remember what module it was within the elite mentorship forum, but Peter had
Maybe I
recommended it,
have.
and I didn't actually read
Okay.
it until after I graduated, and then I read it when
Yes.
I was a little panicky, and it helped me a lot. Like it helped me a
Oh,
whole
okay.
lot.
Great.
And the premise and the idea is, and he has to build you up to it, because if he just tells you, well, then you're like, you don't really have enough structure.
Overwhelmed.
So yeah,
Yeah.
way overwhelmed. But and so, forgive me for, jumping into the overwhelmed territory, but
Go
effectively
for it.
the tools that he has you use are to start off with reminding yourself that, oh, I'm the infinite, right? This isn't what's created in the image of God. It's my soul, my infinite soul. And when I remember that, well, then it puts me in a position to know that, well, my neighbor here is actually handing orders down from my higher self that says, this is what I need to learn. Go, just like you said, go show me what I'm saying. Go show me a reflection of what I'm putting out into the world. And when our neighbors do that, and we realize it's from our higher self, well, we can accept it. Any feelings
Mm.
of feeling less than, any feelings of feeling unworthy, well, then that's all an illusion, and we can reclaim our power from that. And as I was reading this, it was what, maybe the next day or two after, I was part of a podcast group, and this guy was talking about the parable of Jesus when he was confronted by the Pharisees, and how the Pharisees are basically like, hey bro, which one of these commandments are the best, are the best one, so we can murder you. And he said, love thy God, right? Or love God with, above all others, which sounds suspiciously like love yourself, love your true self, and then
Hmm.
love your neighbor as yourself. Why? Because you're handing scripts down to them to come interact in your, and it blew me away how, eloquent his idea was, and how it's just a repackaging of what Jesus said all along, and how
Absolutely.
there's a lot of wisdom to things that we scoff at. I mean, granted, I don't think that the Bible itself is every word wisdom wise, but I think that there's a lot of wise kernels in there that can be easily used. And I love that idea. And I'm curious what you think of people repackaging these ideas that are near timeless, and they come back to the common denominator, right? The smallest common denominator of these mystics throughout time.
Yeah, so I reckon Peter's done a really wonderful job of, not putting him in the place of what could be gratitude for him. There is a lot of reasons to be very grateful for what Peter Sage has put together in the Elite Mentorship Forum.
Yep.
And I highly, highly, highly recommend that everybody should do it for themselves so they can get in touch with their own spirit, or at least any part that they thought they might have been missing. Like if we're experiencing anxiety, what is the part of ourselves that we deny? Like I had to look at that for myself. I had to go and discover what were my deepest shames and where I held on to my old pains and where they held me down and carried me out of posture and out of balance, and how it was me showing up out of balance that caused me to cause the scene to give me grief.
Yep.
How I was the cause of my own pain. Like I had to go and learn that for myself, be humbled by life and go, okay, well, thanks, Pete. Now I can see that, now I can see that. I
Mhm.
can know myself better. And like the Bible, it's been for one day a week. It was asked for us to reflect upon so we could live our lives with awareness. keep a candle burning. It wasn't for us to like directly take and make real today. Like we're not here to repeat the patterns of the past.
Oh no. And we lost him.
Yeah, well, sorry about
Hey, and we're back.
that.
Hey,
And we're
things
back.
happen. Yeah, you
I just got a call, and yeah, I had it took over.
yeah,
So,
well, you graced us with your time before you bounced out to, Malakuta. Is that what you call it?
yes, Malakuta. So that's
Okay.
before I head off. Yes.
Yep. And so right, things happen. I'm
Yep.
just enjoying the conversation.
The
And
flow.
so, Peter Sage, right? Elite Mentorship Forum.
Yes.
I had found that I was on this deep exploration of who am I? And I kind of came to this awareness like, wait, am I causing every bad thing in my life?
Hmm.
I am causing every bad thing in my life. And so I started that awareness, but I didn't really know what to do about it. I didn't necessarily know how to change.
Yep.
Um, and I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson, who then told me to say, hey, let's create our highest ideal of goodness of which we can conceive and make ourselves worthy of it by becoming it, right? Get after it. And so I did that. It was all around Gandalf.
Courage.
It was all around Gandalf, which is a representation of Jesus, right? He's a
Hmm.
literary influenced by C.S. Lewis. And this magician who likes to hang around people who just love to live life. And it was about 7 months later that I heard of Peter Sage. And then, maybe 3 months out, no, actually, no, 2 months after that, then I met Ed Stracher, and then learned from Ed Stracher. And then within 13 months of me creating that, and then I realized how that was happening without realizing that it was happening, which
Hmm.
is kind of screwy in the head.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. 100%.
yeah.
Amen.
And so 13 months after creating that highest ideal of goodness, I was graduating from both the Elite Mentorship Forum of Peter Sage, getting this deep, profound knowledge of consciousness, physics, neuroscience, metaphysics, how we manifest our reality, what we can do about it, how we can actually get what we want. And at the
Yep.
same month, I was graduating from the Healing Genius with Ed, actually learning how to be a wizard. It's like, what the hell, man? Like, wow. And so now it helps me realize just how powerful when people say the pen is mightier than the sword. When you write out that destiny, well, that's true power.
Hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, we get what we seek. What we focus on grows. So if we focus on how we were not enough or our fears, guess what we get more of? Anxiety. And realizing that for myself is the way that I learn to like, okay, well, time to step up, time to mature, time to grow, time to, not assume to know, but go and discover, be curious, be fascinated by life, learn to love where I am and how I can come to terms with all the things that happen within it rather than take a side on them.
I love
I
that.
could be really upset and hold on to grief around all the ways in which things turn out. But that's not my spirits shining through. That's not me being a lighthouse. That's me living in grief. And I
Mm,
don't want to live that way. I'd rather live. So that's the reason why I jumped into personal development. And Peter Sage's Elite Mentorship Forum is epic because it's all personal reflection. Hey, here's some questions to ask yourself. Go and discover what your own individual answer is, not influenced by others, but while other, like your peer group of people, do the same thing for themselves. It's a genius move. It's very clever.
it is because as
Yeah.
people are trying to be their own and best genuine self, well, that's actually what's programming you to help you along your way to become your most genuine self as well.
To listen to our hearts, for sure. And I've found that, as my head and my head and my heart and my heart and my head and my head and my heart, they speak like this and they listen as well, 50% of the time, rather than being run by this guy or run by this guy. Like if I'm run by my feelings, I might feel a bit depressed. If I'm run by my mind, I might feel a bit anxious. But that's just what I've discovered within myself. And as I learned to like see where I was on the rainbow spectrum of light, if you will, if I was burning hotter, if I wasn't warming up, the purples and blues or the yellows and reds, I could kind of find my middle way, my green light through the center.
Mm.
catch the green lights. And so, like, finding the flow without holding on to the past, I've had to learn how to let go of bricks of the past, like, and it happened. And it happened because I found that if I told a story that was resistant to the loss, it would be me telling it, and then I'd hold on to it, and then I'd be bringing it forward, and then it would continue to bring me pain in the future. Whereas if I go, okay, well, why can I be grateful? And there are so many reasons to be grateful. Like the way that I know myself today, after having lived through what I have recently, I wouldn't give it up.
That's awesome, man. And
And I'd do it all again.
well, and what's so interesting, hearing you speak, I mean, there's so many Taoist ideas in what you're talking about, and how
Yeah.
you don't really judge what comes at you as an event, right? The great Tao doesn't choose sides between good and evil, right? We don't get it. The true master doesn't judge the event for how it's portraying itself. We understand that it's there to teach us a lesson. And if we are open to that, we allow it to teach us what it's there to teach us. So we no longer have to be bashing our heads against a wall or finding a place of limitation where that we just can't extend beyond, because we can actually find, what it is that life, that we're handing that script down for. And that way we can learn and then graduate to the next level. And like you've graduated, it sounds like, in ever increasing more difficult circumstances, you're proving to yourself, I'm certainly sure that you wouldn't wish that your father pass, but you're proving to yourself
Yes.
just how strong you are and just how
Yeah.
capable you are.
And absolutely, and I have to give myself credit. Like when I was 25, I was a CFA volunteer, which is the Country Fire Authority here in Victoria,
Okay.
and that taught me how to, like, we would call that the throb. When the pager goes off and there's a job, and you get to get in the big red truck and the fire engines going and the sirens and the lights. Call that the throb, right? Learning how to become comfortable with discomfort, because it's a thrill when you're there, but if you're the one in the life-threatening situation, coming to terms with that thrill is just, it's just how we hold it differently.
Yeah.
And so, in my story, I'm not afraid to share. Like I found my dad unconscious but breathing on his bed because his neighbor called me to say his blinds hadn't opened that day. And so I called the ambulance and went through. I know that I'm being my best self by being of service to my dad right now. And I got to give him a hug before he left his home.
Mm,
Before he left home, I was there
yeah.
rather than not there. And if his neighbor hadn't have called me, maybe how long was it going to take till I found out? I'm grateful I was there. And then I got to, early the next morning, be there to hold his hand and his head as he passed into the next world. Like gratitude is what I have today. And it wouldn't have always been that way, but the way that I see the world is my own. And I love how much I've grown.
And when you say that you've grown, how much different is the Kris today as, say, the Kris from 2019?
See, I would say to you, I've always been pretty spirited, like to be creative and to need to live on my feet and come up with solutions on the day that suit the problem at hand. I've always needed to trust in these two working well. So I've always been connected to whatever is greater than us all, whatever that is for each individual. For me, I like to sometimes call it Jesus, the Buddha, the divine, the universe, all source, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, you give it your own name. When I've felt always, reasonably connected to that and been who I am. And that has meant that at times, I've been a trigger to people's awarenesses, but that's how I see it.
Mm,
I cannot be the way they respond to me. I can only be my best lighthouse sharing my love. And although at times I've tripped and fallen, and sometimes I've tripped and fallen to my knees, I don't live on them.
I
I
like that.
remember to get back up and keep walking, keep moving forward. Fill my sails with gratitude, as Peter would say, and continue to move forward down the river of life. I
Well, and
was
that's
recently in a
oh, go ahead. Recently
I was
what?
recently I was recently in a forest and watching the water flow. And we don't often talk about what a waterfall is in life. Like if we are the river in a lifetime traveling from the tops of the mountains to the oceans. And at times we meet waterfalls where everything falls apart around us. what I noted when I looked at nature was at the bottom, it all comes back together.
Mm.
It all comes back together and then you rejoin the flow. But if I just focus on the waterfalls in life and say, this is where my life ended and hold on to that as my story, there's no space for me to become who I will become next. There's only space for me to be who I've known myself to be.
And
And that
all
would be the
water
worst of
travels
me.
to source, right? All water is traveling to the ocean. And by doing that, you're actually allowing yourself to travel to your true power. And that idea of not living right where you've tripped, that's that idea of Thomas Wayne when he reached a hand down to Bruce, Bruce Wayne, and said, "Hey,
Mhm.
why do we fall, Bruce? So we can get back up." Because it's a learning
Yep.
process. We're not there to judge ourselves for like, I can't believe I'm so dumb that I tripped. No, it's none of that. And that's not going to help the
Yep.
situation. It's not going to help us. But understanding, I tripped so I could learn how to get back up. That's the point.
Mhm.
That was the whole point.
Yeah, and learning how to be more forgiving and compassionate to myself and my idea of other people.
Mm,
Gandhi has a saying, be careful what you think because your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and then you've discovered your destiny. So I know that in each moment, my heart's open to pivoting in new directions in ways that maybe if I'm used to being the purples and blues and so I just stay in my comfort zone over here, I don't see the options to grow towards a greener way, let's say.
mm,
And same if I'm too fiery and I'm all lit up and I've been overthinking things and there's no space in my mind to consider something new. It is when I have to like, oh, slow down, slow down, slow down. Okay, breathe. Remember to breathe. What's that for? I can breathe into like open my brain up again to understanding this is what's most important to me at the moment, but it isn't about to overwhelm me because I'm here for myself, to love myself and to make sure that I hold and nurture myself well as I grow. That's only my responsibility though.
Was self improvement, spirituality, was that really anything that was on your radar before you went through the elite mentorship forum?
That's a funny question. Look, I've always been aware of it and always followed it in my own way. I grew up Catholic. I went to the St. Anthony's Catholic Church here in Noble Park. And then also, went to high school and followed my curiosity there, listened to podcasts that got my interest, listening to all different varieties of spirituality and what their stories had in common. What was the wonderment within it all? Because I
Mm,
found that when I give up staring at the ground and I seek a greater wonder, like it's always up there, that just there's no space for the negativity. I don't need to carry it with me, so I don't. I focus on how I can grow, and that's always looking up and seeking greater wonder. And I've learned that across all religions, they're all speaking about appreciating something greater than ourselves. That's all religions, all indigenous cultures are saying, hey, there's something out there that's more than just yourself. How you appreciate it, how you be at one with it and be at peace with it is really a life's work of living presently. And so that's what I've chosen to do with my life. I don't know what happens next.
And so when you say live presently, um,
Yes.
have you found that that's kind of changed your habits, changed your hobbies? You find yourself doing things that just are new, or just old things that you used to do just kind of fell away?
Yeah, both. Both. So things that were disingenuous to me, things that were inauthentic, things that I was giving too much of myself away, but I found hard to give up
Mhm.
because I didn't know how to give it away. Those things fell away from me. And then I ended up here. Like at the moment, I spent 4 months in Europe last year after everything had happened, and I'd sold my house, and I was like, "Yep, let's go and walk back into synchronicity. Let's go and find the greater life I'm born to live." And then I missed my flight. I missed my flight. First time I'd ever done it. I showed up for the adjoining flight time to come home rather than the original. My bad. I did it. But that from there, I feel like that's what changed my life. I ended up spending a month longer in Europe with Greg from the Pioneer crew.
Oh, okay.
I went to Ibiza and I did a ceremony with him, and that was profoundly mind breaking and bending and awareness provoking. and I'd highly recommend it to everybody. And then continue to live life presently as who I am. And I walked back into having a place to stay, which was my uncle's. Used to be my grandparents' house, and I just renovated it in 2021, so it's like a new house.
Hmm.
And and it's pretty much my own because he's working away from home, and I'm like, I've just walked straight back into a free place to live. How grateful am
What?
I? And yeah, I was home just in time. My mum got sick while I was away, and the
Oh,
day that she came out of hospital was the day that I arrived home, and I was there to look after her.
wow.
Isn't
Talk
it
about finding
wonderful?
synchronicities. Yeah, that is wonderful, man.
Yeah, my sister was moving into a new place and needed some things done, so I could just go and do that because I wanted to.
Well, and you mentioned something interesting about the pineal group. Tell us a little bit more about that. What was kind of your experience, and what was it that was so meaningfully connecting, for you?
Okay, so I would say like do your own investigation into what Pioneer's about. But for me, it was having a direct experience with divinity. How do
Mm,
I actualize and know that it is within me, realize it for myself, and then just not lose faith in that?
mm.
Because if I don't lose faith that it is within me, because I can experience it, we're talking on our magic wands at the moment. Well, I'm talking to you
All
on my
right.
magic wand. Yeah, like the druids got busy back in the day and got real creative and made some pretty fun tools for us to play with today. Although we do need to like address the environment. Anyway, there are lots of important things to consider in life, and I'm just discerning that for myself ever presently. So that's how I do it.
I like that. And the idea that, once you have it, you can actually keep it right from within. When I
The
first
flame
joined,
burning.
yeah, well, and when I first heard of Peter Sage in April of 2022, I think.
Hmm.
And I was going to Hawaii in
Hmm.
May.
Yeah,
And
no doubt.
so I'm going through all of his different straight talks. I've been a real nerd for Sadhguru leading up to that, and
Yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
Jordan Peterson. And Sadhguru told me to go to Devil's Tower. He said, "Go to Devil's Tower on and this is a YouTube, so he's telling everybody, but he's telling me, um, go to Devil's Tower on a full moon. It's got more throat chakra, energy than anywhere he's ever visited in the world. And here I am, just a rando, white American dude that's like chakra. I don't really know what that means, but
Yes.
but but
We're all going to start somewhere. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Well, and but the thing is, I'm somebody who speaks a lot, and
yeah.
I've had a lot of like editorials published in my largest newspapers here, and so I'm thinking, okay, well, those are also our words. And so I could see how
Yeah.
those words could be connected to my throat, right? As I'm speaking things into existence.
Yes.
And I decided, so Devil's Tower, it's a 9 hour drive away from where I live. And so
Yeah.
I figured, hey, what if I go, and what if the only benefit, and I'm picking this up and I'm starting to formulate these ideas just by going through the straight talks, not even starting
Yeah.
the EMF, just the pre-study stuff. And
Yeah.
what if I go and the only benefit I get is the fact that I can prove to myself uh that I can actually go on a spiritual sojourn, even if I get nothing from the sojourn itself, other than proving to myself that I can do it. And
Yep.
so I went, and I'm somebody with a bit of an open mind, a little bit different than a lot of people. So I showed up there and like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna trip some balls, some major
Hmm.
balls over there.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I brought some
Lose
gel.
yourself.
Yeah, well, I brought some gel tabs there, man. And
Hmm.
for those who don't know, gel tabs are a form of really intense LSD.
Hmm.
And there are these trees there, and these trees have these rags tied to them, and these rags flutter in the wind.
Hmm.
And so every time that
Yes.
the wind is blowing, it's effectively like these rags represent a prayer, and it represents the wind carrying the prayer up to the mountain. uh,
Hmm.
and the mountain is effectively the highest ideal of goodness of which people can conceive as they're casting their prayers up to it. And
Of
I've been,
course.
formulating this idea now for um 5 months on what's my highest ideal of goodness. So I
Hmm.
realize as I'm looking at these rags, like, hey, there's probably some really bad things that have happened for people to come here and tie a rag there. but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus that they came to find their highest ideal of goodness of which to pray to. And there was a rock next to some of these trees. And so I'm tripping hard. And I found this
Bringing
rock.
meaning to life in new ways.
Yes. Well, I found this rock to sit on. Well, first I looked at it and I was like, hey, I should sit on that rock. I was like, no, I probably shouldn't sit on that rock. I was like, well, screw it. I'm going to sit on that rock. And so I had my brilliant hat here. I was wearing a Batman scarf. I was just like, I had this grin from ear to ear. I eventually had tears falling from my eyes. And so
Beautiful.
I probably look like a bit of a crazy
Incredibly
person in a
healing.
way. Dude, it was so
Yeah,
healing. But
absolutely.
but learning already about goop, the good opinion of other people, and that I don't need to care about that. I
Yeah,
could hear
yeah.
people walking by and just not care because I was feeling my moment. And because I was there, I found that as my thoughts were crescendoing, well, the wind was picking up. And not as a
Yep.
response to my thoughts, but that my thoughts were responding to the wind. So I was actually one with nature. And then as my thoughts would start to mellow, well, the wind would too. Again, not because I'm special, but because I'm now attuned. Um, and
In
it,
that moment,
yeah, a fleeting moment.
we're not always attuned. We're not
Right.
always attuned. We're all human, and I
Yeah.
agree with you. It is possible to be very well connected.
Well, and I haven't fully been able to recreate that. But what I
Mhm.
have been able to do is so I went to Maui the next month, and when I went to Maui, it was interesting. I traveled around the whole island, and here I'm from Utah. I don't know how much you know about Utah in the US, but very
Yeah, a
mountainous.
little.
Okay, so
Yep.
very mountainous, lots of desert. You'd feel right at home.
Yep.
And so I'm driving around the island, the entire island with my buddy, and I'm seeing, hey, there's some beautiful forests here. Hey, you know where there's beautiful forests? Utah. Hey, there's some amazing mountainous landscape. Hey, you know where there's amazing mountainous landscape? Utah. Hey, you know what? There's some amazing desert. Desert in Maui? Really? Hey, you know where there's some beautiful desert? I mean, distinct from anywhere else in the world? Utah.
In your backyard.
And I found this sense of peace in Maui, this sense of
Yeah.
peace that I never felt before because I'm discovering this stuff that Peter's helping me, find, and
Yeah.
Sadhguru and Jordan Peterson, the people, but really Peter's given me the tools and the map to navigate this area. And then when I went home, about 2 weeks later, I was really jonesing for that feeling of peace. And I went out into nature, and sure enough, man, it was right there waiting for me. Right there. Right there.
Set yourself up to win there, brother.
Yeah.
Well done.
And so this was the
That's it.
start of my
That's
journey,
epic.
man.
That's
I
epic.
know. Isn't
Well
that
done.
awesome?
Yeah, you've been able to like make something really sacred to yourself, so
Yeah.
sacred you can bring it with you to the
Yep.
next forest.
Yep.
Because each forest you go to will be new, and as long as you're present within it, you're exactly who you are.
Well, and then each time I go to a new forest or even the same forest, well, I'm a new person.
Yeah,
And so the forest itself
absolutely.
is new because I'm a new person experiencing it. And so no matter what way I come, as long as I come authentically, well, it's a new experience.
I think we just reached joy.
Yeah. Yeah, was that 540? Yeah, we resonate. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But that's it. That's how we find wonder in the moment is really the solution.
Mm,
And if we can focus on that, that's what we get.
yeah.
And I think that's what all sages and priests and elders and gurus and they've all been pointing at the same place. Like, look up. No, for the first time, I went to Italy last year and stood in front of the Vatican. I was like, okay, what do my ancestors want me to know if I stood here and observed what I see?
Mm,
They've brought in the obelisk from the Egyptians. What does that point at? Sun god Ra pointing us at the sun. It's a big stick saying, look up. And then they celebrate water through the fountains that are out the front of the place. Okay, wonderful. So water is what makes us sacred here on Earth. We're all 80% water anyway.
hmm
I've got more in common with you than I have in difference, always. Whether or not, it's not just my ideas that make it different. And the rest of it's 20% clay and ashes to ashes and dust to dust anyway. We are more one on Earth here today than ever before. Like we live on a sphere, there are no sides here. We're all one under the sun. All that stuff, when we can hold with confidence that awareness of as me, like this is all me and I am all of it, and how I am with it is a reflection of me. How I love it, how I be my lighthouse within it, how I start living life from here. it's without fear. Do you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
all just automatically, I didn't even consider not being it. I just was it.
Well, and what's
So,
fun about that too is that, part of the structure of what we're talking about with our training, in the
mm,
EMF is about sharing that experience without fear of judgment to your community of
mhm,
other people. And so now, can you
mhm,
imagine the setting of 100 other people on a call? And I'm like, guys, wild eyed, let me tell you about when I tripped balls at that Devil's Tower and
100%
how amazing it was.
horrible.
And like, what do people do with that? Right? They laugh, they're, maybe they clutch their pearls, like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy did, illicit drugs.
That is the answer, though.
It really is. And because again, there's no such thing as a false emotion. No such
Yep.
thing. Because the emotion just gives us a bearing on where we are in life. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's just saying, hey, this is
Yeah.
how you feel about the situation. And what we prescribe, right? What definition we give that emotion. Well, that's when we start creating illusions that often will go ahead and um they can get us confused and get us lost on the path, unless we find a way to empower those definitions to serve us, right? And I think that's perhaps maybe the best gift that I got from Peter, is that I get to choose what my emotions mean to me. I can let go of every other person's definition of what they thought that I should be, what worthiness was in their eyes, and I can decide all that for myself, and then allow that to inflate almost like a balloon. And as I inflate it, it kind of carries me along with it, the way that a balloon does.
Wonderful.
All right, we had a brief interruption there, but we're back, and and this is part of just going with the flow, right? You go with
Mm.
what life throws at you. It is what it
I
is.
appreciate your tolerance.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. Like, I kind of hijacked a little bit of keeping your vacation from transpiring an hour early, and just being able to talk to people who have such a deep connection to who they are, a deep connection to love, and being able to share that. Because I
Yeah, yeah,
think
yeah.
that anybody who sees a genuine interaction of others who's just share love in a dialogue, it can't do anything but add benefit. And dialogue is how we've learned for so many years, which is why
Stories.
we're so drawn into it. And as we share these stories of goodness, people are gonna be like, well, holy shit, I want some of that.
I hope so. I really do. I really hope people want the results that they see in us for themselves, so that they can live a life of fulfillment where it's not lived with fear because you don't need it. That's I think if we were to simply put like maturing from a baby into an adult is a path, it's a journey, and it takes us to discover more of ourselves along the way. And if there are parts that we've missed, hey, point them out so we can grow. Like, let's be in this together. Let's be as one about it. Let's find the more wonderful way because it's better than anxiety anyway.
Yeah.
And you don't have to live in conflict, inner conflict or conflict in the outer world, because you've got more faith.
Well, and then if you look even further, right, let's say conflict throughout, wars throughout different nations, well,
Mm.
that's going to start from, assuming that it's honest and it's not some sort of, political manipulation. That's going to start
Side
with,
taking, yeah.
right. That's going to start from inner conflict, right? I can't get
Mm.
along with you because I can't get along with myself. So if you're showing me a reflection of who I am and I don't like who I am, well, of course I'm going to punch you. Of course I'm not going to want you in my sphere. Of course I'm going to want you to get away because you're showing me that which I'm hiding from. So why would
Yeah.
I
Do you
want you in
reckon
my space? Yeah.
do you reckon President Putin loves himself?
So that's a good question.
I'd love to ask him.
That would be interesting. I suspect that anyone who's ever worked for like the CIA or the KGB or like the Mossad, I think they have a very bizarre and macabre and probably transactional level relationship with love. And
Yeah,
they probably don't know what real love is, because it's
yeah,
always looking at, hey, what can you do for me? But that's a really
yeah.
good question.
But I'd also like to acknowledge that it is incredibly difficult to be the leader. It's
Of any
incredibly
country.
difficult to be the one who you put your hand up and be like, "Yeah, I'm going to take the lead on this. Please don't shoot me down." So, in the same breath, yeah, I'm grateful I'm not him.
Well, and yeah. I could certainly wax political very easily. I typically don't on these because I really want to inspire people and not necessarily because
Yeah,
it's
for
so
sure.
well. And have you done Peter's quantum alignment course?
I have, yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's this idea there that you're going to be familiar with. And so I'm going to
Yeah,
break it down a little bit for people. So
go for it.
effectively, everything in the world is made up of atoms. Atoms are nothing but empty space, 99.9 to the sixth power empty space. And so if everything's empty space, effectively, we are a projection from our true source of power, which is again, right, the what's created in the image of God, our soul. And since everything else around us, right, is made up of energy, our air is made up of pure energy. It's made up of what stars are made of. And apparently, an empty cup has enough energy in it to dry up all of our oceans if you separate the atoms. Um, and so, with that energy, when we're talking about manifesting and creating, well, what we're doing is we're creating things that either help us or creating things that either hurt us. And usually, the things that hurt us, well, it creates this non-corporeal entity, much like a agent in the Matrix, that then assumes, right, your authority and gets you to start thinking things that serve it, right? Serve it so it can take your energy. And a brilliant way to look at that is somebody can be very happy with a family evening, completely be okay, everyone's eating, and somebody says Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin or vaccines, and immediately, boom, people have an opinion about it. And I'm not here to say what the opinion should be, but when we're controlled to the point where we're going from having a very pleasant conversation, or at least allowing other people to have their space, to then being angry. Well, why did it make us angry? Right? What tendrils are pulling at us that then get us to then serve that authority? And I
How
think
do
that
we take ourselves too seriously?
the more that we look at that, these invisible tendrils that
For
control our
sure.
lives, the
Yeah.
more that we can reclaim our own sovereignty, and the better our life becomes. But people aren't going to believe what you see, and so you're going to have to find creative ways to invite others to be like, hey, love actually is a better way. Because what happens if I talk to
Yeah.
you, give you a hug, versus if I yell at
Yeah.
you and tell you why you're wrong? Which one makes you feel better, right?
Yes. Why is it so easy? Why is the answer so bloody obvious and we just forget to be capable of it? Like we get caught up in our thoughts and then our thoughts carry us away so that we're living in some past timeline. And then we bring it to today and go, yeah, it's your fault anyway. And like, when we point the finger, there's always three pointing back at us.
Yeah.
If we assume that responsibility and go, okay, well, let me breathe again. Oh, it's a butterfly.
Yep. Yep.
That kind of thing just happens. And we're back in this present moment, not even needing to address taking a breath. I like to use water in that same way. Like if I'm about to feel overwhelmed,
Hmm.
I need some refreshment. Hey, it's always a good idea to offer water to anybody anyway,
Yeah.
and it shows you care. It immediately breaks up whatever was once maybe potentially about to be conflict for a breath and some water.
I love that. So there's this idea in the Tao Te Ching that says,
I
uh,
love that book.
so do I, dude, so much. And so, man, when man is born, he's soft and supple. When a plant is born, right, it's soft and pliable. When a man dies, he's stiff and rigid. When a plant dies, it's dry and brittle.
Mhm.
Therefore, whatever is rigid and inflexible is a disciple of death. And whatever is soft and flexible and which allows is a disciple of life. And that's so
Yo,
powerful.
that's epic.
Yeah, isn't that, man?
Wow, nice share, dude. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amen to
Well,
that one.
yeah, right. And so that's there's going to be different translations. That's chapter 76. I only have that
Yeah.
one memorized just because I love it so much.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and so I've got various tattoos across my body. One of them
Yeah.
is actually one of it's lots of greens, lots of browns of like nature, but it's death that I had back in 2008, I think. And he's holding a book, And the book says there comes a time when a man must choose between his life and his soul. Well, it
Yep.
sounds like I'm on that path where I realize what's
Uh-huh.
I've got a tattoo on my right calf of Batman and Joker. And Joker
Yep.
just he looks poisoned. He's got this weird blue skin. He just looks toxic. But he also has a giant smile on his face. And Batman very stoic. And so what this represents is beware the pursuit of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the pursuit of happiness, we're happiness over that next hill, or once I accomplish this next goal, well, then what happens is that madness often masquerades as happiness, and the only way to be a good person in that world is to be stoic and miserable. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a warning. That's a warning tattoo of if I feel myself creeping into madness, to check myself, or if I feel that I need to yell at people because I'm a good person, to check myself because things are going awry.
100%, and that's like a self check on like where we enter duality. Like in this, what's more important, the container or the water?
Yeah.
Without each other, they're both useless. And so we need both sides to have their way to find the peaceful
Mm-hmm.
direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely love what you're saying, bro. And I love that you're sharing your message and that you're asking people intuitive questions that just come up to you presently and conversations occur. And next minute, here we are. Isn't
Yeah.
it magic?
Yeah. Well, isn't it though? And whoops, I apparently have my calendar up. Well, that's one of the beautiful things, man, about being in the present moment, actually hearing somebody for what they have to say, is that, and again, coming back to Jordan Peterson, he said that if you're talking to somebody, it doesn't matter who they are, if you're talking to somebody and they're not important to you, or they're not interesting to you, it's because you're not listening hard enough.
Not showing curiosity. Curiosity. Yeah.
Yep. And
Yeah.
just go ahead.
I have learned that the more that I've given up resisting life, the more of it I've been able to learn to digest in new ways. And when I stop saying no, no, no wonder, no wonder, why
Mm-hmm.
was there no wonder? Because I was denying it.
Mm,
And when I took responsibility for that, it became my own to wield. So I got my ignorance and I was
mm-hmm.
able to like turn the other cheek better because it became my ignorance to turn away from.
Yep.
So I would say, like, learning about more of myself, I've discovered more of my darkness and more of my light. And now I can hold them all with balance
I love that.
because I understand how to hold my darkness in a way that empowers me rather than disempowers me. I'm not afraid of my shadow.
Yeah. Not trying to be a whole person by denying a whole half of who you are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
coming to that understanding, right? That's something that Peter really helped me with. And my
Hmm.
peer group really helped me with. And what I love about
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
said about, not resisting, right? So he brings up this idea that which you resist persists. And coming back to the Tao again, right? If you give evil nothing to oppose, it'll go away on its own. Not because
Mhm.
it's not there, but because you can step out of its way.
Yep.
And this idea of if somebody wants to pick a fight, like, hey man, that's a really nice tie. Like, what do I do with that? Right. And they want to pick a fight even more. Hey, it's a really nice day, man. It's really, again, sorry, or just, whatever, and just move on. Just don't fight. Somebody wants to get into a
Mhm.
fight, just don't fight and step out of the way. If there's evil butting up, well, what can you do to introduce some sort of flow that then dispels it on its own so you can step out of its way rather than resist and try to control that outer world? Because that resistance is going to stem most likely from a feeling that we're either unworthy or that maybe we're going to lose some level of love, right, in the eyes of those around us. And we can let that
Yep.
go and realize that that love is carried within us. And that, like, hey, what your thoughts are, hey, I love to share, I love to collaborate, love to build upon. But at the end of the day, I hang my hat in my house. Right. And that's just so, and it can sound selfish, but selfishness, right, self-care also is addressing the self. And when selfishness is self-care, well, that's fine. If selfishness comes out in greed, well, that's the dark side. And so there's always a balance, and too much of one is an imbalance. And being able to find that flow is not necessarily the easiest thing, but boy, is it enjoyable and is it rewarding when you try.
100%. I love every word you're speaking, mate. That's spot on. How to how to not get caught up having to take the other side that somebody's trying to provoke us to need to take, and
Mhm.
instead being able to say, "I am seeing this for what it is. Forgive them for they do not know, and I'm looking for the more wonderful way." And if that means that at times when I can't get fed, I become the bread that others need. Okay, okay, great, wonderful. And you can yeah, for that you can say thank you, Rory Kilmartin. He taught me a lot as well.
Oh, okay, nice, nice.
and learning how to accept that presently and be it in the moment, to become comfortable with discomfort.
Mhm.
I've spent a lot of time in yoga learning, how I can become strangely flexible, strong, and balanced in my body so I could realize it in my mind as well
Mm.
and understand that I have I am uniquely myself and that's perfect. As I learn and grow, that will change too.
Yeah.
And I've digressed off of my channel of thought there, but yeah, I love my life. That's all I've got to say.
Well, I certainly so, here I am, an entrepreneur, have my own business. I didn't realize that magic was a real thing. Like I thought I had to go to
Mm,
books in order to find it. Um, and then here I am being able to actually heal people of things
mm,
that, arthritis, things that are incurable, right? And that's beyond mind blowing. And this is something that I never would have found had I not been curious about, hey, can I make life better? Does life have to be this way? Is there a better way? And by being openly curious and asking these questions, well, I pull people into my life because I'm now ready. I'm telling the universe, hey, oh, look at this student who's finally ready. Let's go ahead and send him a master. And people seem to come into my space and my sphere, um, almost as if it was preordained or pre-orchestrated,
no doubt.
which is just so fascinating to look back, right? That idea that Steve Jobs, that you can't connect the dots until you're looking back. Um,
Mhm.
my God, is that brilliant and is that true? Like seeing a magnificent river from a bird's eye view, but when you're in the river and you're trying to stay away from the rocks, well, it feels so chaotic. But you're learning how to avoid rocks now. You're learning a skill
Mhm.
that you didn't have. You're learning how to become stronger and become better, because one day it may not just be you going down the rocks, right? You might have a kid with you, you might have a wife with you might have other people with you, and if you can send them love and protect them as a means of you overcoming your trials, I mean, isn't that what life is about?
Beautifully said. Inspiring others to want to hold their own light for themselves.
Yeah.
Being able to be the invitation and the example to others to say, yeah, if you see something in me, know you can know it in you too. That's all I want for it. Like if I want anything at all, it's to know everybody to know their own brilliance, their own absolute glory. That's all that I want for the world. Isn't that amazing? But that comes from my heart. Like my deepest desire is that. And I think that everybody who's doing personal development is looking to change for themselves and maybe connect to that more divine side
Mm.
in their own way. And I really, really like give all my gratitude for that. I also wanted to ask you a question for you,
Yeah.
Joshua. I have discovered along my journey that tension in my body has been releasing. It's probably one of the more profound experiences of going on this journey, but I don't have anybody to share that story with because I haven't met people who speak to me about it. But you're speaking about healing Alzheimer's. Sorry, Alzheimer's. You said
So I've done
joint pain,
arthritis. I haven't done
arthritis,
Alzheimer's,
arthritis,
but
arthritis.
I have done a mental disorder, which was very
Hmm.
fascinating and interesting.
No doubt.
Yeah, different vertebrae, spinal vertebrae that are
Mhm.
impacted, and just chronic pain mainly is what I focus on.
Yep,
PTSD, helping people let go of
yep,
the grossness. But what is it that
no
you
doubt.
felt?
So what I discovered was that I began to stand straighter. I began to breathe deeper and stand taller. I began to carry my left shoulder further back. I began to let go of holding on tension in my jaw. My
Mm,
jaw released and came forward just naturally. So I wasn't doing this. I wasn't
mhm,
biting my. I wasn't doing this anymore. I was doing this, and that just feels more natural.
mm,
It feels like my jaw's at ease now, so I can speak more freely, and I'm not locking my jaw up like this anymore. So these are things that I've experienced just naturally by letting go to living a more present life. That when I've given up resisting being who I am in my body, a more gentle flow came through.
Wow, I like that.
Yeah, yeah, it was epic. But
I
how go?
no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I don't know how to share that with anybody because I haven't been able to speak to anybody about their own experiences they've grown about releasing tension in their body.
So I have found, as far as like, standing or even sitting straighter, I have found that when I connect, especially, from my pineal gland, I feel like there is like a string or a rope on something connected, and like something's pulling it, and I'm like it's like stretching me out.
Well,
I
sick.
know, dude. And the weirdest thing too is in the center of my head, I feel like I can feel this pulsating. I can
Yeah,
feel
I've been
this
there.
this thing doing this. Um,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes if I get really deep, I can feel it almost like, if you look at what a gravity well looks like in space, right? You see the Earth and it kind of creates this little gravity well. I can feel this like coming down,
Feeling like that.
connecting to like my throat, and I can just feel my heart thumping in my throat as I feel this thing just going, this energy ball just going in my head. And it's really strange because I didn't know such a feeling was a real thing. And
Yeah.
until I met Ed, Ed is who unlocked that. But I did find that cleansing the calcium deposits from my pineal gland. When I first started opening my pineal gland, it hurt a lot. Actually, it hurt, like I just had this pain. I had this pain that like fire almost like, and what it made me think of was like the like calcium's like deposits that are like melting, like molten salts almost. And when
Uh,
when I could feel this going on, I could almost feel it being grainy and gross. And it was the strangest feeling, but it also trying to break free and trying to shine from this enclosure. It hurt, and it was really hard to sleep. And I had this sense that even though this doesn't feel good and is very uncomfortable, I had this sense that if I lean into it, well, there's gonna be greatness there. And the pain went away. The pressure is the when I go to sleep and I wake up. Once I wake up, the pressure's not there until I activate it. But the second I activate it, I'm connected all day long. And so it does cause weird things with my sleep a bit. But I find that I still wake up rested. I went to the gym this morning. Woke up at 5 a.m. Went to the gym, and so even if I don't get a great night's sleep, I find that I can just be energized. I find that I get the nourishment that I need through the connection. I find that the stability that I'm
spiritual
looking for
energy.
is in the connection, and it helps me deal with the discomfort in the outer world in here so much more.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. That is profound. That we are the storyteller still at the end of the day, even on the bad days.
Yeah.
And if we choose not to have bad days and we look to, feel great now, ask our awareness to rise instead of remain in the to me experience of life, that just another breath can change the way of being in like moments of discomfort, moments where we feel, or genuinely, there are times when I'm not enough. In those moments, learning to become comfortable with them. When I realize that I'm not, and being comfortable with it and saying, okay, I can't hold all the balls in the air. I'm sorry I had to let one go, but it's evident and I can't change it now. And I still love myself and I'm not going to change that
Mm.
because I love myself and I love you endlessly.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
100%. Yeah,
Well, and
easy.
so you are somebody who has a lot of skills and a lot of tools that other people just don't have, right? This is not something
Yeah.
that we naturally fall into. We have to seek it, and then we have to
Yes.
kind of stumble a lot, and then we start to figure it
Yes.
out. Do
Yes.
you teach other people?
I'm learning. Well, one of the reasons for going to Malakuta is to go and create that course.
Mm,
So I've realized that I've gathered some awarenesses for myself through my
uh-huh.
own curiosity that maybe some people haven't done for themselves yet. Wonderful. I have things to share, and so do everybody else.
Yeah.
In their own way, they all have their own, they shed their own light on their own world in their own way, and they have something to share of their own worldview. I have my own, and I'd like to learn how to share that. So I'm going to go and create that over the weekend.
I love it. So what
That's
I'll
one of the
do is
reasons why I'm going there.
once you have that created, go ahead and follow up with me and send me like whether it's a website or just a way for people to contact you. And
For
so
sure.
that way people are interested because I can't imagine that somebody can listen to you talk and not come away with, wow, this guy is super interesting and I'd love to learn more.
Well, thank you for being an incredible interviewer, asking very intuitive questions in the present moment. I really appreciate living presently with you, genuinely, because that's how it feels for me. This is just what comes through. I'm not trying to, I don't know what I'm about to say next, let
Yeah.
alone now.
Yeah. Well, it's liberating to live that way.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, incredibly. To have faith and I know and believe in my own brave heart, and that self-esteem and self-belief live here and they talk to each other, and that connects me to a more wonderful way
Mm.
for us all, not for me, for everybody. So, yeah,
Man,
it's
that's
epic.
awesome. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. I want to release you. Go to
Thank
Malakuta,
you.
build out that course, right? Find your brilliance. Help find a way to lead others to their own brilliance. And
Yeah,
this has been a real pleasure, man. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing how else you're able to affect the world in a good way.
for sure. Me too. Yay for living presently.
Yep. Yay for living presently. Well, this has been
Legend.
another
Great to meet you, Joshua.
Hey, my pleasure, man. This has been another episode of What Saith the Crooked Nose. And thank you so much for your time, Christopher. Any last thoughts?
Live, love, laugh now. Don't take ourselves too seriously, and here we are.
Yep. I love it. Well, you heard the man. Don't take yourself too
Awesome.
seriously and go out and live.